The nice thing about indie first-person shooters is that they provide so much more visual variety as compared to the grey-brown shooters in the AAA space, so let's kick things off with SULFUR, an action-adventure FPS where you're exploring this world, and while it has first-person shooter combat, it does show you an inventory screen with loot, so it does have more RPG elements and looks excellent. Like Cuphead that came before it, Mouse has a very distinct visual style that is reminiscent of the 1930s rubber hose animations, also known as the Steamboat Willie-like look from Disney, where the jazzy soundtrack to the trailer, and presumably the game, gives you an idea of what to expect. I don't know if the visuals in this trailer are anything close to the final version, since the environments do look incomplete and are like movie sets in places, where you're supposed to be fighting your way through a corrupt city and it doesn't look like it's all there in this video. Still, it's a little bit more violent than expected, where you can uppercut enemies to cause their heads to come off, so I do wonder if the House of Mouse will come after this developer, but it certainly got a lot of attention, so let's see how it turns out. I attempted to stick to more straightforward linear first-person shooters in this video, but Fortune's Run is too good not to share, one that has immersive sim elements and a fantastic throwback look. It is set in a decaying industrial world where humanity is obsessed with intergalactic travel and conquering the stars, but without consideration for the frontier planets that it uses. This game cites the original Deus Ex, Divine Cybermancy, and Metal Gear Solid as inspirations, where you're attempting to survive in this dystopia. This game participated in the most recent Steam Nix Festival and was very well received, so go hunt down playthroughs of its demo and get a feel for the game, where it releases in September and is one to watch. I happened to come across this game on Twitter, where Out of Action is a pretty hyped first-person shooter that looks awesome, having both multiplayer and single-player modes, which is interesting for a smaller team. It is supposed to be set in a brutal cyberpunk universe, but I don't know, at first glance that doesn't seem to be the case, since it's missing all the neon lights and augmentations, at least in this early footage. But I do have to admit that the action looks great. It is stylized and looks nice as well due to the shaders used, but based on a Steam store page, there isn't much information to go on with just a list of bullet points, but it still looks good enough to be of interest.
I know you must have a lot of questions, but those will have to wait.
An awesome looking sequel is Phantom Fury, the follow-up to Iron Fury from 2019, but is now under a different developer in Slipgate Ironworks, who also made the excellent first-person slasher Ghost Runner, where it sees the return of our protagonist from the original game as she battles mutants to save mankind. This is a boomer shooter through and through, but with more modern features, where the variety in weapons and action are the highlights, not to mention the bombastic story campaign that will see you move around parts of the USA. This is under the modern incarnation of 3D Realms, who was the company that made games like Duke Nukem in the 90s, but where this version is under the Embracer Group, with the original people with lineage to those old games being in the modern version of Apogee Entertainment, where current 3D Realms has an impressive catalogue of boomer shooters and throwback first-person shooters, having one of the more interesting stories in video games.
SENTRY online. Objective update.
Now this title is my jam since SENTRY is a stylish looking co-op first person shooter that is defense focused, where you're protecting your spaceship against aliens. To do so, you can construct traps and turrets, working together with friends to ensure your survival.
Objective update.
This reminds me quite a bit of natural selection due to the construction element, but where it is PvE instead of PvP, where I do wonder about the structure of the game since it is supposed to have a dynamic single player or co-op campaign. My question is, how big is the spaceship, where I guess you should be able to travel to different parts of it to defend against various breach points, perhaps moving from one mission to the next, but either way, it looks like fun with friends. Another boomer shooter of interest is Selaco, one that runs on the GC Doom engine, which is pretty much a prerequisite for throwback indie FPSs, where this game sure is inspired by Doom in terms of action and the slightly puzzly and exploration bits. The weapon feedback in this looks impressive, with powerful shots and even a variety of grenades that you can use. It does also have shop elements and weapon upgrades, looking to be well covered on the progression front and should be good.
So you're the one making all the fuss.
No, what you're looking at is not body camera footage from a police officer, but is indeed a video game where Unrecord got a lot of attention when it was first reviewed for both good and bad reasons, but of course there is some trigger warnings due to how this looks. People have also doubted the authenticity of the footage, saying that they took cameras to film a live action trailer, with the developers countering that this is the power of Unreal Engine 5, where I'm on their side since you can see parts of the footage where it looks like a video game. You play as a police officer investigating several criminal cases where there is a dialogue system and the game is being compared to a detective thriller. It still seems to be a ways off, so let's see how this game shapes up, but it is certainly a technically impressive piece of work.
Where the fuck is Oscar?
The minute this game was first reviewed, everyone immediately understood what they were going for, where if you don't know, maybe the name will give you a hint since this is titled Agent 64 Spies Never Die. Did you get it? Yes, of course, it is a throwback to GoldenEye 007, the incredibly popular first-person shooter on the N64, seen of course through its art style and visuals, with the very blocky characters reminiscent of games from the early Polygon era. You play as a Sean Connery lookalike secret agent called back into service once again to save the world. But most interestingly, this will not have multiplayer support, so no odd jobs in this game, but rather has a focus on the linear story campaign. Of course, this next title is a no-brainer since it has already impressed in early previews and demo builds, where the use of your foot to kick enemies and doors, as well as the weird and wacky world is the appeal, coming to us from Devolver and the people that made Broforce and Genital Jousting, so it has excellent pedigree, making Angerfoot a title of interest, where you can find more upcoming indie games of 2023, such as another Devolver title in Gunbrella in this video.